No, we're going live now.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
Good morning, America.
All right. Good morning, America. Absolutely. Want to welcome you to the Wisdom Wednesday podcast with Dr. Your tea, your orange juice, your water, and join in on the conversation. As you know, for the month of June, we're going to be honoring fathers. And so I'm so honored to have my special today. In fact, he's a relative and he's a phenomenal man. I honor him. And I just want to officially welcome Dr. Wilsando Seegars. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful, Dr. Seegars. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me.
I'm glad you said yes to the invitation. Let me tell the audience a little bit more about this wonderful man. Dr. Wilsando Seegars epitomized the term Renaissance man. He has worn and continues to wear the hats of a variety of titles, including model, soldier, officer, entrepreneur, and social political advocate, organizer. However, for the last 23 years, he has most proudly served as an educator that hails from Detroit, Michigan, that now resides in Naperville, Illinois. To date, he has written 3 books, so he's an author, and contributed to academic research on the mirroring alignment of standardized assessment. His most recent research focuses confirmation bias in school discipline and is rooted in critical race, CRT, and confirmation threat theory, CRT. The findings will be released in August 2022 in the book Approaching Disparities in School Discipline Theories, Research, and Practical Change. I can't wait to read that. Dr. Seegars is a loving husband with over 20 years of matrimony and a nurturing father of 2 beautiful daughters. He is honored to be welcomed to the discussion to honor the men who embrace their responsibility of fatherhood with a continued commitment to uplift their families through presence, spiritual guidance, social and moral balance, and loving leadership. So, officially, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Can you
again
hear
for
me?
inviting. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me?
All right. I hear
Are
you
you?
loud and clear.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. And
Yes.
shout out to all the other fathers out there that's continuing to do the great work and whose shoulders I'm standing on. So, as I said earlier, I am because they are.
Absolutely. I love that. Now, how would you define fatherhood?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Fatherhood for me, it has a lot of different components to it, but I think for me, I look at it as it's important to be a presence. You want to be present. You want to be spiritually in tune. As a spiritual leader of the family, you want to be able to offer loving and nurturing guidance. You want to be able to show responsibility through your examples and setting the tone through your leadership. So there's a lot of different components to it. But the most important part for me, I would have to say, time and presence. I think that by being time, putting in the time and being present, all the other things hopefully can begin to fall into place.
And so many times we always want to honor mothers, but I think fathers are even more important to some degree because they're like the headship of the family. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, I definitely think that fathers oftentimes we can go underrated. But I really believe that it is a balanced approach. I have to sit back and I look at what I bring to the table as the man in the house and my approach to nurturing the children. But I also look at what my wife brings, and I think that there's definitely some yin and yang and some balance that needs to take place. I don't necessarily know if one is more important than the other, but I definitely think you need to have an acknowledgement that both are major contributors to what's put into our children,
Right.
or should be.
I agree because they are our future leaders. When we think about your two beautiful daughters, and what are your daughter's name again? I know Tanya, your wife, is a beautiful wife, and she's your helpmate there in raising those two beautiful daughters. Can you share a little bit more about your daughters? And it's different from
Uh,
having a daughter versus a son, right? I guess.
Listen, Bill, because I've worked with so many young people for so many years, I like to
Yeah.
say that I'm blessed in the sense that I do have two biological children, but I have many children
Yes.
that relate to me, that honor me, that see me as an important person, that's pour some things into them. So my daughter's name are Afriye and Ayana. And Afriye means special,
Hmm.
and Ayana means beautiful flower.
Wow. And that they are, I tell you. A couple of weeks ago, I posted on social media an acronym for father. And let me just share that with you and see if any of these words resonate with you. And I think they kind of represent you all. But F stands for faithful, A stands for available, T
Okay.
stands for teacher, H stands for hero, E stands for encouraging, and R stands for role model.
Okay.
I know.
I like all of those. And then I think that the way that you put that, I think I honor that. I believe that each one of these are key ingredients. And going back to what you asked me to be able to define fatherhood, and I think the way that you just wrote it down in your or broke it down in your acronym is pretty spot on.
Yeah, yes. And look at role model because, when you were teaching in Detroit before you went to Illinois, I know some friends, it's a small world. And one of my friends said, when they saw my last name, they said, "Do you know somebody named Sanders Seegars?" I said, "Yeah, that's my cousin." And she said, "Oh, he was an excellent teacher. He just really poured into me." And so again, it made my heart feel good. I said, "I know that's my cousin." you know. So
First
you
time I
made
heard
it.
that story, but you wouldn't happen to recall who that person happened to be. Can you
Yes,
recall?
the father's name is Stan. What's Stan's last name? Ooh, Stan. It'll come to me. Like, I'm having a senior moment, but yeah, you taught I think he had two daughters as well, and you were his daughter's teacher, and how they were so finally talking about how much you invested in them and how much they learned from you. So, yeah, it was Stan Wright. Do you know
Okay. Well,
Stan? Okay, okay, recognize it's coming. Yeah.
he said Stan Wright. I wonder if his daughter's name was Paige. But nevertheless,
I think
again,
it was.
I've worked with so many young people, but I'm honored to know that the person that came across you was able to speak about me in a way that says that I represent it and that they're continue to carry some of the lessons that I tried to pour into them.
That's right. Tell us more about your three books you've written. You're an author. Can you share a little bit about that? And then your new one is coming up in August as well.
Let's see. So my books, I try to come in life to drop some knowledge, to give people an opportunity to think about things from a different perspective. I try to challenge them. My writing style is very much, I like to say, up close and personal. The first book focused on relationships. I took a very raw look at relationships. It's called The Game According to Daddy. And I tend to write under some pseudonyms because, again, I'm in education and wanting to make sure that I keep sometimes what I say in my books private from what I represent academically. So I'll do that through my pseudonyms. But the first book focused on relationships and it's been well received. I take baseball and I analyze it through the lens of a metaphor, and I talk about the various positions that you see in the game of baseball and how those represent different stages in your life in terms of relationships. And so that's the very first book. and that's been well received. It's still available through Amazon, and it's called The Game According to Daddy. The second book was a book that was written kind of borrowing from the style of Dr. Seuss, that many people believe was just a children's writer, but he was a whole lot more than that. He was actually a social political writer that hid his political analogies in children's stories. For example, when Green Eggs and Ham, we like to believe that Green Eggs and Ham was a story about green eggs and ham, but the reality is it was a story about blacks and Jews being accepted by the white masses. And so metaphorically, the blacks and Jews were the green eggs and ham. And as if you go back to the story, remember the main character who was trying to get somebody to accept change. The character's name was Sam I Am. Well, that's Uncle Sam. So that was the United States government trying to get the white masses to accept change. And of course, you kept hearing throughout the story, I will not have them in the house. I don't want them with a mouse. I don't want them here or there. And he keeps trying to get them to accept change. And finally, at the end of the story, the character accepts change. Well, I was able to borrow from that particular approach, and I wrote a book called The Long-Lasting Lesson of Rupert T. Rex, T being spelled T-E-A, and Rupert being used to represent the Republican Party, the conservative Republican Party, TA being the Tea Party. And I gave a story through using a children's structure in that rhyme scheme to tell this story about the importance of being able to embrace change and what can happen if you don't. Finally, I started writing poetry back in the early 90s. And my last book was called Through the Lens of Catastrophic Clarity, where I wanted to tell the story and narrate the story of the Black male experience using poetry and prose to be able to tell our collective story. And so on the cover, I have a number of Black males and really focusing on their eyes to be able to let it be known that I'm trying to tell the story of us and our political story in terms of how we navigate politically in the social atmosphere of America, how we love, and of course, our spirituality. And so that last book is called, again, Through the Lens of Catastrophic Clarity, and just trying to be able to tell the story and represent the complexity of Black males. Because again, a lot of times, some people would believe that we're very simplistic, one-dimensional characters when we know that we're full of life and very dynamic. So I wanted to represent that. And then, of course, you spoke of this last book. I mean, my most recent piece, as I stated, it's a chapter that's focusing on bias. And well, my chapter focused on bias, but it's focusing on discipline in school. And so I wanted to take a look at some implicit bias. As I stated earlier, we all have them, but some people are in positions of power where their implicit bias can have real impacts on children. And so I wanted to focus on that. And again, it kind of looks at it through a racial lens, because a lot of times people are scared to talk about race and talk about our differences. So I took a look at it based off of my years of experience and, of course, research, and wanted to tell give a perspective on that.
Wow. And all of those books you mentioned, Will, can they be reached? Can they obtain those books through Amazon or directly through you? Or
you can definitely obtain those books through Amazon. Again, the titles: The Game According to Daddy, The Long-Lasting Lesson of Rupert T. Rex, Through the Lens of Catastrophic Clarity, and this most recent one, that one doesn't come out till August, and that won't come through me. The actual main editor for that particular book, editor and author, is Dr. Troy Adams. And if people are interested in that one, contact me and I'll make sure you can get a copy of it.
Okay, I'm excited. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking back when you were doing modeling. Have you done any of that recently? I know you used to do all of that. And
I modeled for years, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it. I'm thankful for the opportunity. But when I came out with my board game, I no longer wanted my face to be represented on other people's products. And so I intentionally decided at that point in time that I didn't want my face associated with other people's things, and that I really wanted to focus on being the face and image of my board game. And so I have not modeled professionally since that time period.
And do share about the board game. I remember that when you came out with that. Do you mind sharing with the audience about that?
And I'm a proud member of the hip hop generation. Hip hop happened to be the music that was being developed and being coming out and becoming popular during my teenage years, my early teenage years. And so I have to say that it's the narration of my journey. Everybody likes to be able to look back on their time period, to be able to reflect. And for me, it was hip hop. And so I came out with a board game that captured the essence of that history, the importance of that history. And I wanted people to be able to have fun with it naturally, but like to edutain. Being an educator, I wanted to edutain people. So the whole concept of the game was to prove yourself as the ultimate MC by being able to show mastery in 4 different areas of the hip hop genre. And that was one, you needed to know quotes, so you'd be able to finish music. You needed to know the language of music, so you had to be able to go from slang to standard English, so with translations. You had to be able to obviously know some historical information, so those are knowledge questions. And then you had to be able to rhyme, and the rhyme is very simple. You simply would choose a word in the game, flip that card over, and there would be one word, and you would just go back and forth with words that rhyme with the word on the card. And again, it gave people a chance to really be engaged and appreciative and learning about the hip hop culture. And so the game's still available. The first 25 units were actually turned into collector's editions. So I do have some still available. And believe it or not, recently I was on one of these sites that sell products, not Amazon, but crap, it's another site that you can go and buy products. But I see that there's people out there now selling my board game, and they're selling it with marked up with a markup value. So it's obviously the value of it has appreciated. But I would tell people right now, if you want the original, come and get it from the original. Contact your boy Will Skills, and you don't have to pay that marked up value people try to sell those games for. But it's nice to know people when they're trying to sell them.
Isn't that something? Was it on eBay maybe, or could have been Etsy, one of those other?
eBay, that's it. eBay, the name escape.
I know people sell things on eBay. I bought things on eBay before. Yes. Wow. So can you just share? I was thinking too, with your 2 daughters, are there certain words of wisdom that you've given them that they can repeat it? I know, Dad. You know, you tell it to them when they were 2. You tell them to them when they were 10. Now, you know. So sometimes we just want to ingrain that thought into their hearts and their minds. Have you have any words of wisdom for your daughters and for others?
So I'm always big, particularly because I have daughters. I'm big on teaching them to be a triple threat. You know, I like for them to embrace, obviously, being young women, embrace being beautiful, not just necessarily just in their physical appearance, but in their internal, in their spirit as well. So I think that's very important for them to understand beauty goes beyond just the physical, and embrace being intelligent. Be smart. Don't be one of those people. You know, I see it all the time as an educator. We have some young ladies who, for whatever reason, they think it's okay to be pretty, but they try to downplay their intelligence. And I think that can set them up for failure as it relates to the type of young men that they may attract. So I always tell my daughters, be proud of who you are. You know, I tell people I am unapologetically Black. I'm not one of those people who walk around trying to act as if somehow or another, because I have certain titles, or because I've had certain experiences, or because I may live or reside in a particular type of community, that I forget about the African American experience. And so
Right.
I want my daughters to honor all of that comes along with that the history, particularly of slavery, it's just one page in the
Mhm.
diversity of history. So don't get caught up in allowing people to set the tone and the narrative for you. Know who you are. So
Mhm.
those are some of the things that I feel are important for my daughters.
And for others as well. It's a good standard to live by. It really is. So let me ask you this too. I know you're in Illinois, but your hometown is Detroit. Your family's here. I know you're very family oriented. And when we were
Right.
talking before we got on air, you had mentioned that Detroit is always your home because this is where your main family, your essential family is there in Illinois. So how do you feel about family? I mean, you did a lot of history on our own family. You told us who we're related to that we didn't know about. How important is family to you? Well,
I mean, family is the base. They set the tone. I mean, I said I am because they are or they were. I stand on the shoulders
mhm,
of legends. Carl Seegars, my grandfather, set the tone, and so he passed it down to my Uncle Cliff, my aunts and uncles, obviously. But
yes,
my Uncle Cliff is my hero. And I followed in his footsteps, and he passed the baton on to me, and I probably have tried to carry it and pass it on to others. And I am unashamed of talking about the giants whose shoulders I'm standing on. So family is everything to me. It's one of
yeah,
those things that it always brings you back. You can put fancy titles on, and I've got some cousins on my father and mother's side, but I've got some cousins that they don't care about my titles. They need to
mhm,
make sure that when I show up, they make sure that my skin is tough enough to be able to go out there in the world, because they'll come at me with all type of degrees of foolishness, talking about my body changes, talking about uh any type of little thing, weakness that they could exploit. So you got to have tough skin, but I believe that it's all in love to keep you strong enough to go out there to be able to navigate in the world. And so again, for me, family is everything. And
yeah,
going back to what you stated earlier,
mhm,
because I wanted to really know the history of the family, I began to do some research because, again, as you know, with two brothers marrying two sisters and the Seegers tribe in Detroit being created, ultimately there was a disconnect down in the South. And so I began to do some research and was able to make that reconnection. And so it's very empowering to be able to look back, really be able to the rest of the story. I almost feel like Alex Haley when he went on his Roots experience and being able to make that connection. So it's very important to know where you come from. And even though through the research we begin to see some people that weren't necessarily as dark as us, they still played a role in
yeah,
getting us here. And I'm talking about, yes, we've got some Caucasian in the family, and whereby some of them may not necessarily want to acknowledge the history. The
right.
reality is there's a whole tribe of us that was created because of the some of the shenanigans that was taking place back during slavery. And so we don't want to necessarily celebrate the way
Mhm.
that they went about bringing us here, but we do want to acknowledge that it is a part of our history, and we're not going to be ashamed of it.
Absolutely. Because from our history, we can know how our future will project. You got to know where you came from to know where you want to go and direction you need to go.
Right.
The last time you were here for it was a family homegoing, and you had mentioned something about the scholarship. Can you just mention that again? Because I didn't connect like I wanted to, and I want to do it. Maisel and I want to make sure that we connect with that and share it now, and so that even the family members who are watching can also reconnect and get involved in that.
Well, I think that it's important for each generation to represent as building blocks for the family lineage. And so,
Yeah.
understanding that, as I stated, two brothers married two sisters in the Seegers clan in the North, the Detroit group was created. And of course, I don't necessarily want to forget the other Seegers member who my grandfather and his brother was following up to Detroit. And so I know he followed his uncle up here. And now I know we haven't really had much contact with that particular group, but I want to make sure I acknowledge them because they are in the Detroit area. But we feel it's important to have building blocks, and whereby my grandfather came here with a 7th to 8th grade education coming out of South Carolina. That was what was being offered to his generation. And then moving forward with my mom's generation, it was a big deal to be able to graduate from high school. And because we know in the Detroit area, we had jobs where you could leave high school and go into the factories and still be able to make a great middle class living. That was great for that generation. Well, with my generation, we became the generation that began to, again, building blocks. So we always want to go further. And so with that, for us, it was complete high school and try to go to college. And so as we began to complete some of those tasks, now it's how do we begin to invest in the next group? And so we recognize that whereby in America, there is kind of like this caste system. It's an economic caste system. There's a way out, and we found that the way out is through education. And so we want to be able to invest in our children and invest in our family by putting some things in place that will allow the young people to know that we believe in them, that we support them. We want them to go further because that's important for each generation. And so we've created the Seegars Scholarship. And that scholarship is set up where right now we're building it up for 4 years. And we've asked the contributing members to send in, and it's not a whole lot of money. It's really roughly about $25 a month. And each person who decides to contribute, we take all of that money, we put it in a collective pot, and we allow it to begin to mature, build interest, and we'll begin to do our payouts after the first 4 years. We've got some people in the family, as I said, when you know better, you do better. We've got some people that's gone to college, that's obtained some knowledge about business, that's obtained some knowledge about investment. And so we want to also begin to use those resources to allow this money to be able to grow and to let it mature where we can use it for generations to come. And so each time that one of us wins, we feel it's important that we begin to reach back and invest. And so far, I see that the Seegars tribe, many of us, we winning. And so this is our way of looking back and reaching back and investing in our own.
Yes. So family members who want to participate in that, should they reach out to you, Will, to start the contributions? Is this what I'm
Yes,
asking, right?
I'm representing as the spokesperson, but I believe teamwork makes teamwork, and I'm not doing it alone. We've got other people that's involved. We have a Richard McLeod who's involved. I can name off all of the names, but we've got several of us that's involved. If you don't necessarily want to contact me direct, but feel free to reach out and contact me. And it's one of those things that we want people to recognize that if you are conscious in your thinking and you believe investment and investing in your family, and you constantly looking for ways to give your child and other young people in our family an opportunity, we welcome you to come apart. And it's only $300 for the year. That's really what you're paying. But right now, that $300, when you start adding it up with all of these various members, it's a nice size. It grows rather quickly.
And so that compound interest, I know about that.
Using that collective work and responsibility and cooperative economics, using the terms of Kiswahili from Kwanzaa.
All right. I love it. I've enjoyed the conversation. Are there any closing words you want to give to fathers? And I want to wish you a happy Father's Day. I know it's coming up in a couple of weeks, but fatherhood is every day. It's not just a one single Sunday when they honor you guys. That's why I wanted to honor.
Fatherhood is every day. And my closing words would be, again, I salute those who are living their creed, who are honoring the fraternal order of fatherhood. And I thank you for continuing to be role models. And I thank you for stepping into it with humbleness and understanding that sometimes it can be a thankless job, but it is a necessary job. So I value you, I salute you, and happy Father's Day to all of you.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. Tell your wife and your daughters I said hi. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and join in on the conversation with all that wisdom nuggets you just deposited to
Uh,
us. You know, I love you.
Thank you. Love you too. Thank you so much. And tell Lizelle I said hello. Happy Father's Day. And I look forward to our next dialogue.
Sounds great. Bye for now.
Bye for now.